Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're heading to a really fascinating spot where ancient history and geography kind of meet the Museum of the Good Samaritan.
Yeah, we've got a bunch of observations from a visit there, and we're going to unpack it all for you.
The idea is you'll come away with a real feel for this unique place, nestled between Jerusalem and Jericho.
Exactly. You're about to get a much richer understanding of why this location, which might seem kind of quiet now, has been so important for, well, centuries.
We'll dig into how its position on the map shaped history.
And get into the amazing stories held inside the museum itself. Think of it as a shortcut to being, really clued in about this ancient crossroads.
Okay, so first let's set the scene. Imagine we're standing at a lookout point.
Right. Our info describes this incredible vista taking in the Jerusalem and Jordan mountains. You can see landmarks like Mount Scopus, Mount Olive.
Mount Olive with its towers. It says here there was a bit of confusion spotting all three.
Yeah, apparently it took a little pointing out the Hebrew University Tower, Augusta Victoria, and the Church of the Ascension. Big landmarks, but you got to know where to look.
Okay, so you're looking out, and what strikes you is the land itself. This hill, Maladumum.
Maladumum, exactly, or Han el Hatu, historically. It's not just a random hill. Geologically, it's an anticline.
An anticline.
Yeah, think of it like a wrinkle in the earth folding upwards, creating this raised area. This specific hill actually interrupts the natural downward slope from Jerusalem towards the Dead Sea.
Okay, so it breaks that descent.
It does, and crucially, it sits pretty much exactly halfway between Jerusalem and Jericho.
That seems important.
It's more than just the halfway point, though. Look at the bigger picture. You've got these really deep gorges, Wadi Kelt and Nahal Og, carving up the land on either side.
So like natural barriers.
Precisely. They basically funnel anyone traveling between Jerusalem and Jericho right over this hill. There wasn't an easy detour.
Making it a natural stopping point.
And a place that just kept being important over and over again through history.
So this hill has been a major player for a long, long time. Let's trace that importance.
What's amazing is the continuity. We've got archaeological evidence, a pool, other structures dating way back to the Second Temple period.
Wow. That far back.
Tells you it was significant even then, and it doesn't stop. Roman and Byzantine times? Those Second Temple sites are still in use.
And they added things.
Oh, yeah. A big Byzantine church was built right here, actually where some of the observations we're drawing on were made, inside the church ruins.
Interesting. Why build a major church there?
Well, we'll get to that. But see how each era builds on the last? Then, Middle Ages, the Crusaders show up.
And what do?
They build a fortress, Castrum Rouge. Red fortress. Why? To control the road. It underlines that strategic value again.
And then even later, Ottoman times.
The building that actually is the museum now, that was a hostel, a guest house, a khan, used right up until 1948.
So it just kept serving travelers for centuries.
Thousands of years, really. From ancient pools to Crusader forts to Ottoman inns, right on this spot. That unbroken chain just hammers home how vital this place was.
A continuous thread of use.
Right up to the present day, yeah. It really emphasizes the enduring importance of this hill on that Jerusalem-Jericho road.
Let's talk more about that road. The hill's geography made it a bottleneck, sure, but the road itself, big history there too, according to our sources.
Definitely. First off, pilgrimage. Hugely important for Christians heading down towards Jericho to the baptism site of Jesus.
And that area near Jericho's significant for Jewish history too, right?
Absolutely. The crossing of the Jordan River. So multiple layers of religious importance tied to this route.
But it wasn't just religion.
No. It was a vital trade route, bringing goods, especially agricultural stuff, from the fertile Jordan Valley up to Jerusalem. A lifeline, really.
And the geography made it the route, pretty much.
Well, yeah. Our info points out you've got steep cliffs north and south. So this was one of the few relatively easy ways to get between the Jordan Valley Dead Sea area and Jerusalem.
Okay, now the name. Maladumum. Ascent of Adumim. The Red Ascent. Sounds dramatic. Where does the red come from?
Two main theories here. The first one is pretty straightforward, the rocks.
Red rocks.
Yeah, there's a specific type called the Katurim Formation. It's a metamorphic rock, basically sea sediment that got cooked, giving it this reddish color. You find it right here, and also on the way up to Arad from the Dead Sea.
Makes sense. Name for what you see.
Yeah.
But there's another idea. A bit darker.
There is. The second theory connects red to, well, blood.
Because the road was dangerous.
Exactly. Historical accounts, and think about the parable of the Good Samaritan itself, they all suggest this was bandit country. Robberies, attacks, it happened a lot. So red from spilled blood.
Grim. Which leads us nicely to the museum itself. It wasn't just built randomly. It has a specific job.
Right. The museum opened in 2009. Its main purpose was to house and protect mosaics found in Judea and Samaria.
And there's a legal reason for that, isn't there? Something about the status of the area.
Yes, that's crucial. Because the area's status is contested internationally, there are rules under international law. Archaeological finds generally can't just be moved out to, say, national museums in Israel proper.
So you need local solutions.
You do, to keep the heritage in the region where it was found. This museum acts like a safe house for these amazing mosaics.
Protecting them from what? Construction?
Yeah, or farming, or just neglect, or vandalism in their original locations, which are often pretty exposed.
And the collection covers different groups.
Very much so. You've got Samaritan, Christian, and Jewish mosaics side by side. Interestingly, the sources note that nothing's been brought in, so far anyway, from Muslim holy sites that are still actively used.
Okay, and part of our info comes from inside the Byzantine church reconstruction. Tell us about that space.
It's quite something. They rebuilt the church using original stones, over 2,000 of them found right there.
Wow, like a giant jigsaw puzzle.
Pretty much. And it stands as a memorial church. It's there specifically to commemorate the story of the Good Samaritan.
Which is so tied to this location. Let's unpack that parable. It's from Luke's Gospel.
That's right. It starts when someone asks Jesus, "Who is my neighbor?" It comes right after Jesus talks about loving God and loving your neighbor as the most important commandments.
So Jesus tells this story.
Yeah, about a man traveling down from Jerusalem to Jericho, this very road, presumably who gets attacked by robbers. They beat him, strip him, take his stuff, and leave him half dead.
And then people pass by.
Right. First, a priest comes along, sees the man, and crosses to the other side of the road. Then a Levite does the same
People
thing.
who you'd maybe expect to help.
Exactly. But then comes a Samaritan. Now, Samaritans and Jews back then didn't generally get along. They were seen as outsiders, sometimes enemies.
But this Samaritan,
He stops. He sees the injured man and feels compassion. He goes over, bandages his wounds using oil and wine, common treatments at the time, puts the man on his own donkey, takes him to an inn, and pays the innkeeper to look after him, promises to cover any extra costs on his way back.
it's such a powerful story about compassion crossing boundaries.
Totally. The person from the group that was looked down on is the one who actually acts with true morality, more so than the religious figures. It's a huge challenge to prejudice, to narrow definitions of who deserves our help.
And it's important, as the sources stress, not to read this as anti-Jewish, right? Jesus was Jewish.
Absolutely. His teachings often connected with the poor, the marginalized. He was sometimes challenging the actions of the elite, sure, but the message here is broader.
It's about universal compassion.
Exactly. The Samaritan helped someone from a different, often hostile community. It really hits home that neighbor isn't about geography or religion, but about shared humanity and need.
And this idea, this spirit, it seems to have echoed down even into law. The Good Samaritan Law.
Yeah, many countries have laws like that. They vary a bit, but the main idea is usually to encourage people to help in emergencies by offering legal protection.
Protection from what? Getting sued?
Primarily, yeah. Protecting someone who tries to help in good faith from being held liable if things, accidentally go wrong. It's more about removing a disincentive to help, rather than forcing people to act.
And our sources connect this modern legal idea back to Jewish thought.
They do. It resonates strongly with a verse in Leviticus. Lo tamod al damariecha. You shall not stand idly by the blood of your neighbor.
So a pre-existing moral obligation.
A very ancient one, yeah. A duty to intervene if someone's life is in danger.
Is there a specific law like that in Israel?
Yes, the info mentions the Hak Halo Tamad, the law of not standing by. Apparently it's rarely enforced in court, but it acts as a significant moral benchmark.
And there was an incident mentioned. Yasmin Feingold.
Right, a story about her near drowning where people hesitated to jump in. It highlights that tension, between the ideal of the law and people's real-world fears or hesitation. It's fascinating how that ancient parable still shapes modern legal thinking about helping others.
Okay, let's shift back to the museum's artifacts, the mosaics. Our sources say you can tell a lot just by looking at how simple or complex they are.
It's really interesting. The materials and the craftsmanship, they're like clues to the context. So mosaics with just basic colors, red, black, white, and using bigger stone pieces, the tesserae.
Tesserae, those are the little tiles, right?
Exactly, the individual cubes. If they're bigger and the colors are simple, it generally meant it was cheaper to make. You'd find those in more public areas or maybe less wealthy homes.
Okay, so bigger tiles, fewer colors equals less cost. And the opposite.
The opposite suggests more investment. Lots of different colors, maybe even different shades of the same color, and much smaller, finer tesserae. That points to more effort, more skill, and definitely more expense.
The wealthier patrons.
Usually, yeah.
Yeah.
People who could afford that intricate, detailed, really impressive artwork for their homes or synagogues or churches.
And the museum building itself, the Ottoman guest house, is built on even older foundations. But the stuff inside is mostly original.
Overwhelmingly so. Our info stresses that apart from just 3 replicas in one room, pretty much everything else, inside and out, is the real deal.
That's incredible, gives you a direct link. What about those 3 replicas? What are they?
Okay, the first one is from a synagogue found in Gaza, near a place called El Himal. It famously shows King David playing the harp.
King David.
Yeah, though apparently when they first found it in 1965, they thought it might be Orpheus, the Greek musician. But then in 67, they found Hebrew inscriptions confirming it was David.
Okay, replica number 1, David from Gaza. Number 2.
Number 2 comes from the Naran Synagogue, north of Jericho. This one has a really direct message inscribed on it. Shalom El Yisrael, peace upon Israel.
Wow. And the synagogue itself.
Had a bit of a rough time before it was excavated. It was actually being used as a sheep pen until 1967. Shows how easily these sites can be lost or damaged.
Definitely. And the 3rd replica.
That's a fragment from the Susia Synagogue, down in the southern Judean hills. It features something called a tabula ansata. It's like a tablet shape with handles on the sides, often used for inscriptions.
And this one had an inscription.
Yeah, commemorating the donors who funded the synagogue. And that synagogue, Susia, it's actually still standing today. You can visit it.
Amazing. The museum also highlights the Samaritan community, which you mentioned earlier.
Yes, there's a dedicated section. And they are, as the sources say, a tiny community now, maybe 815 people total, one of the world's smallest religious groups.
But with deep roots in this area.
Very deep. About half live near Tel Aviv in Holon, but the other half live right near Nablus on Mount Gerizim.
Har Gerizim, which is their holy mountain.
Absolutely central to their faith. According to the Samaritan Pentateuch, their version of the first 5 books of the Bible, Gerizim, is the holy place God chose, not Jerusalem. They believe the binding of Isaac happened there.
And they still practice their traditions there.
Oh, yes. They make pilgrimages up the mountain 3 times a year, hold ancient ceremonies. It's incredibly important to them.
And they have other unique features.
They use the ancient Hebrew script, the Paleo-Hebrew script, which looks very different from the modern Hebrew alphabet. And their version of the Pentateuch prioritizes Mount Gerizim.
When were they most prominent in this region?
The sources point to the Byzantine period as kind of the peak of the Samaritan population here.
And their mosaics reflect that.
They often do. Samaritan mosaics can be incredibly fine, really detailed, using a wide range of colors like multiple shades of yellow and red. This suggests their communities had significant wealth and independence back then.
Are there specific symbols in Samaritan mosaics?
Yeah, you sometimes see things like special curtain designs or particular types of wine glasses, which are thought to symbolize happiness and wealth.
Moving to the Christian section, our sources mention some unique local materials being used.
Right. There's an ambo that's the pulpit made of this really distinctive black stone. It's bitumen stone.
Bitumen, like asphalt.
Kind of, yeah. It's found locally, and it has these oily properties. Very unusual.
And the red rock again. Malodumum's rock.
The Katurim Formation, yes. It shows up in the Christian artifacts, too. You find it near here, like near the Marsaba Monastery, which is also in this general Malodumum area. That red rock and the black bitumen stone are really characteristic of this specific region.
Is there a connection between the bitumen and the red rocks formation?
Geologists think there might be. The theory is that the intense heat needed to transform the original sediment into that red metamorphic rock might have come from energy released from within those bitumen deposits underground. A fascinating geological link.
Okay, let's swing back to the synagogue mosaics. The sources mention some surprising images, even cultural mixing, leopards and giraffes.
Yeah, it does seem a bit unexpected, doesn't it? Wait a minute, leopards and giraffes in a synagogue? That really throws my preconceived notions for a loop. Why do the sources suggest that might be the case?
It seems likely that the mosaic artists back then worked from pattern books, sort of like catalogs.
Ah, okay. So they had standard designs.
Exactly. And these books might have included all sorts of motifs, including various animals that were popular in the wider Roman Byzantine culture.
So a synagogue might commission a floor, and the artists used patterns that weren't necessarily strictly Jewish in origin.
Seems that way. So you end up with things like leopards, flamingos, even giraffes showing up in synagogue floors. Now, some of those animals did exist in ancient Israel, but giraffes, probably not in the Talmudic period.
So why allow these images? Weren't there rules against graven images?
Well, that's the interesting part. Explanations range from simple cultural influence,
Mm.
just adopting popular styles, to perhaps more flexible interpretations of those rules in different communities or times.
Okay.
The sources even mention an anecdote about Rabbi Gamliel, a major sage, being okay with a statue in a bathhouse, arguing it was decorative, not for worship. So there was some interpretation going on.
So navigating the surrounding culture. But there were also common Jewish symbols in these synagogue mosaics.
Oh, absolutely.
Things like a bird in a cage, often interpreted as the soul within the body. Grapevines were very common, symbolizing bounty or perhaps Israel. And as we mentioned with Susia, inscriptions naming donors were frequent.
What about that Gaza synagogue mosaic, the David one? Did it have those elements?
It did. Our information says it included the bird in the cage, grapevine motifs, and a donor inscription that actually helps date it to 506 AD. And of course, the main panel originally was David playing his harp for the animals. The replicas here, the originals in the Israel Museum now.
How did they even move these things? Mosaics seem so fragile.
It's a painstaking process. They usually glue a strong fabric or temporary surface onto the face of the mosaic. Then they carefully cut underneath, detaching it from its original plaster base.
And then roll it up?
Often, yeah, like a carpet, if possible. Then
Mhm.
they transport it, lay it down in the new spot, put a new base underneath, and then carefully remove the temporary facing and the glue.
Wow. What about really big ones?
For huge ones, like the Laud mosaic you might have heard about, they sometimes have to cut it into manageable sections and move those sections on reinforced boards or plates. It's delicate work.
So, just to recap clearly, why bring them all here to this museum?
Fundamentally, it was about rescue and preservation.
Rescue from what?
From destruction. Their original locations were often vulnerable. Maybe a farmer's plow would hit them, or a new building project was planned, or there was just no security against theft or vandalism. They were in danger.
So the museum is a safe haven.
Exactly. A secure place where these incredibly important pieces of history and culture from Jewish, Christian, and Samaritan sites can be properly cared for and studied and, importantly, seen by the public.
This deep dive really paints a picture, doesn't it? This quiet hill, the Museum of the Good Samaritan. It's like a focal point for thousands of years of history and movement.
It really is. It's witnessed so much human activity, and now it safeguards these amazing stories told in stone and tile.
We've touched on, the road's importance, the mystery of the red name, the sheer power of that Good Samaritan parable, and how it even ripples into modern law.
And the mosaics, showing this incredible mix of cultures and beliefs right there in the artwork. Jewish, Christian, Samaritan, all leaving their mark.
It really makes you think about how landscapes, just the physical shape of the land, can steer history, and how preserving these fragments, these mosaics, it lets us connect across centuries.
Absolutely. It lets us learn from all these different groups who passed through or lived right here. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other places that seem ordinary on the surface might be holding on to just as many layers of history waiting for us to look closer?